So I was really into self-improvement at one point, but now that I look back on it calmly, I can see that there were quite a few issues with it. First off, self-improvement involves spending a lot of time and energy on examining yourself and growing into your true self. The premise of this is the concept of inside-out thinking that if you change, others will too. But in reality, just because one person changes doesn't mean that everyone around them will. It's not that simple. I think there's a risk of overlooking the dynamics of human relationships within groups. Secondly, self-improvement requires a considerable amount of time and energy for self-discovery. A lot of times, the underlying assumption is that the real answers are within yourself. But often, the answer is not necessarily within yourself, and getting stuck on searching only within yourself can lead to isolation from others, becoming egocentric, and potentially heading in a self-centered direction. Furthermore, self-discovery assumes that the real you is a single personality, but in our daily lives, there isn't just one me. There are several me's within one person. It's not uncommon for us to have conversations with these several me's within ourselves in daily life. With the flood of information through the internet, the problem lies when there's no deep and substantial discussion existing within oneself. The importance of having this deep internal dialogue has heightened today. Self-improvement, however, assumes that there's only one real you, and this mindset makes us overlook the opportunity to have these deep internal dialogues. This outlook ruins the opportunity for an in-depth discussion among the multiple selves within us. Thirdly, a characteristic of self-improvement and personal transformation is oversimplifying things. For instance, a lot of self-improvement books talk about the idea that one cause results in one effect. The idea that changing oneself leads to changes around them is one typical example. The real concept of change in society or groups involves various relationships and other complicated factors, including coincidences. The way self-improvement sees things often lacks a wide-ranging view of realistically and dynamically unpredictable happenings. This leads us away from a real and dynamic perspective. The world of self-improvement often supports the idea that changing oneself can change those around you. Here, they often use the concept of the butterfly effect, which assumes that a small change can lead to a big one down the line. However, caution is needed with this. As I mentioned earlier, changes happen in a complex process involving numerous factors, and it's unrealistic to think linearly that one small cause directly leads to a big effect. This process potentially denies each person's free will. I mean, whatever everyone else decides to do or not to do, just because there's been some intervention, we could end up in a deterministic world where one fixed outcome simply happens like dominoes falling, leaving everyone's free will denied. Each person's free will gets negated, leading to a certain outcome, just like dominoes toppling over. This deterministic possibility is included. Fourthly, self-improvement has a tendency to seal itself off in a small, arbitrary worldview. That being said, it could potentially lead to supporting ideologies that maintain the status quo in groups, organizations, or societies. For example, assume a black company where workers feel dissatisfied. If workers learn self-improvement and believe that changing their mentality can change their perception of the workplace, then the company's management doesn't need to change anything. The workers will accept the status quo on their own, leading to the likelihood of preserving the status quo. Fifthly, the idea of success in self-improvement is pretty subjective. It seems to assume everybody has their own different targets for success. But everyone different means everyone's okay, and this might lead to the misuse of methods learned from self-improvement. These methods could conceivably be used for unethical purposes. If you have a method to set and achieve goals, it can be used to achieve socially unacceptable ends. It's entirely possible that someone could use the techniques to achieve negative outcomes in society. Finally, the sixth point I would add is, self-improvement isn't very open. What I mean is, in philosophy or science, those studying the subject can critique its limitations, then work to improve it. The goal is to create something better. Yet in self-improvement, absolute truths or laws are posed with little room for questioning or alteration. In basic terms, it's difficult to question or change this. Anyone who studies philosophy would recognize that humans can never truly reach an absolute truth. The very notion of claiming an absolute truth or law is, from the start, fundamentally flawed. Taking this into account, it's better to continually scrutinize and refine self-improvement. So, this is the main problem with self-improvement, as I've come to understand through my personal experience. This is something I felt and understood because I've been involved with it for such a long time. I hope my insights can be helpful to others. Thank you so much for listening.